existed only as prototypes, such as a colour variant of Gotcha. Some early multiplayer racing games used colour to differentiate each player's car. Indy 4 in 1976 is one early example, and Car Polo in 1977 was the very first colour arcade game to use a microprocessor. However, these early examples are normally glossed over in favour of the first truly successful RGB colour game, Galaxian. Essentially a fancier version of Space Invaders. Each of the brightly coloured alien ships.
We ain't got time! Go, 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 go!
Welcome to Cordkillers, our mission to report the intel from the front lines of the cord-cutting revolution so that you folks can use that information to be able to watch what you love, when you want, where you want, on whatever damn device you please. I'm Tom Merritt.
Hey man, I'm Brian Brushwood, and that little opening video was brought to you by our friends over at Ahoy, who have a video called Pixel Pioneers, A Brief History of Graphics Part 1. Just Google it on the YouTubes, and you'll be able to find it. It's amazing, man. It's like a time portal back to 1970 whatever, where as you watch the war between vector graphics, aka oscilloscopes, versus raster graphics with pixels and so on. It's amazing. I highly recommend you watching the entire thing.
Yeah, I was pretty intrigued just by that little bit there where they're like, oh, Galaxian? Yeah, you probably think Galaxian is the first color. It's not. Let's tell you like 6 others that preceded it. Then we'll talk about Galaxian.
Exactly, man. But I'll tell you what I'm interested in is our special guest for this week's episode.
Yeah, we're very excited to have Andy Forcell. You might know him as the former CEO of Hulu, and he has graced us with his presence today. Give us a little insight from the industry side of things. Andy, thanks for joining us, man.
Thanks, guys. Love the show. It's really cool to be here.
Right on. Hey, Tom.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're cool with it, I think we should. Andy is kind of a big guest. We should just jump straight into the primary target.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch what you said because I'm too busy thinking about jumping right into the primary target.
The primary target. Just be cool.
So we could probably just
straight
do the
primary target.
So Sony last week announced PlayStation Vue, first past the post of all the Sony, Verizon, Dish, etc., Intel, now Verizon, who are going to provide an over-the-internet MVPD, an over-the-internet cable service. PlayStation Vue will be live and on-demand programming. They're saying in the press release around 75 channels. At first, it'll be available just on the PS3 and the PS4, but they intend to bring it to other devices, and they mentioned the iPad specifically. They've got NBC Universal, Fox, Viacom, Scripps, pretty much all the big ones except ABC Disney, which is interesting since Dish has ABC Disney, and they don't have HBO on board, at least not yet. They're going to launch this month, invite-only beta in New York City, and then they'll follow with invite-only betas in Chicago, Philadelphia, and LA, and they say they expect to launch commercially in the first quarter of 2015.
So we've talked on the show about the importance of passing the babysitter test. It's got to be so dead simple that your babysitter can show up and you can just hand them one remote and say, this is what you're going to do to show the kids whatever you want. Like, I mean, are we almost there? I understand that, obviously ABC makes a difficulty there, but man, this sounds like 90, the uncanny valley. It's like 90% of what we want, right?
Well, yeah, and it's going to be one less input to switch. So as long as the babysitter can operate a PS3 or a PS4, that'll just be one of the apps that she'll be able to go to. Now, I have some issues in how the user interface is laid out there. It's not the simplest thing in the world, but if you're used to that interface, it's going to be right in there. You'll be able to watch all the stuff you want to watch. They're doing a good job, I think, of making the interface within PlayStation Vue look like something that is better than the interfaces you would normally get on cable, at least based on the screens that they released. Andy, I know that you've got some ideas about MVPDs and how this works. What do you think of Vue from the outside?
Well, I think it's exciting. We looked at this at Hulu probably every 18 months for a few years. Should we try and get in that business of being what the industry would call an online MVPD, basically a cable provider that's all IP delivered, no set-top box. And I think I think the question is what consumers would ask a service like that to solve for them. I think what a lot of people, one of the issues with cable right now is there's this feeling that it's not a good deal, that, you're paying for too much of what you're paying too much in an absolute sense, and it feels like you're paying for a lot of things you don't watch. I don't think any online service is going to be able to solve that, at least in the early days, because I guarantee you whatever Sony's paying, that they're paying top dollar rates. The big media companies aren't going to give them a rate card that's advantaged in any way. If anything, it'll be disadvantaged because they start with no volume in terms of subscribers. And so that's where you see them. The only way they can keep the price to something reasonable is to leave a couple big chunks of media out of the bundle. And it looks like that's the approach they're taking there. The other problem people don't like that you referred to, Tom, is the user experience is not great. It's getting better, but sort of glacially with all the cable services. And that one, I think there is a big opportunity. And I think I haven't seen the Sony stuff yet. A lot of it was stuff that was developed at Intel that they bought from them. I think there's a huge opportunity there to make it simple and to pass the babysitter test. I don't know that it's in the first generation when you're using a remote with a PlayStation. I think it's more likely going to be in the second generation when you can use an iPad to control the PlayStation or whatever internet connected TV you have, because I think there you've got the opportunity to have a user experience that's a lot simpler and a lot more fun to use.
I mean, I guess that's one of the things that's extraordinary about this agreement is that all of a sudden Sony goes from being essentially zero player to all of a sudden being the dominant force in over-the-top network supplying, right? I mean, it's like essentially all of a sudden they're the #1 cable network for over-the-top IP-based cable.
Well, technically, but they're the only one. I mean, it depends on what we see in the next year or two in terms of new entrants. I mean, I think Apple will try and do something like this, whether they get it done or not. It's very tricky to deal with all the media companies and eke out freedoms from them and what you're allowed to do on the channel guide. I'm going to give you an example. Just, we always thought, look, in the channel guide, the default view of the channel guide shouldn't be channels, start with channel 1 and
Sure.
go up to 1,000. The default view when you first pop in there probably ought to be, what are more people watching? Let's order it just in terms of right now across America, what are people watching? Simple things like that, I think, could be really cool and would make people suddenly worry less about the price, at least the early adopters, and say, that's something I want. Whether they're going to be able to do that, because that's a right you don't just have. The agreements you have with media companies will actually restrict you from doing that and force you to the old sort of boring grid. That's just one example, but there are a lot of sort of old school practices here that you have to get permission and agreement from 5 or 6 or 7 media companies in order to innovate and make it feel different.
So I guess the follow-up question becomes, like, how far behind can Xbox be, really, at this point? Like, I mean, would you say if you're going to throw $50 on a bet, would it be plus or minus 6 months at this point?
Well, look, I think Xbox and Sony were the fact that they had such a big footprint in the living room with tens of millions of devices meant a lot 3 or 4 years ago. But today there's Apple TV, there's Roku, there are internet-connected TVs. I don't think Xbox has to be necessarily the next one. They may be thinking about that, they may not. But with the CEO change there, one of the things that happened is Xbox Studios shut down, so that the original stuff they were trying to do in terms of creating networks on that device has been reversed. I don't know anything, but my guess is they don't have something big and aggressive in the works. It's more likely that it would be someone who doesn't own a box. But I don't think in today's world that's a killer. I think
that would be a huge change in favor of Sony if that's the case. I like that. That would be a great.
Hold on now, because I think what Microsoft's doing here might be wise, right? Sony's saying we're going to do it all, right? We're going to provide the stack. We'll have the box, the PS3, the PS4, and we'll provide the service. I think what Microsoft was trying to do originally with Xbox One is we're the window into your cable service because we know you're going to do that. If they can be the people who give you whatever Dish comes out with, whatever Verizon's on-queue service ends up being, and maybe if there's others that enter later on, they could down the road have an advantage because they're not tied into any one of them. So you have more people saying, well, actually, I like this offering better than the one Sony has, so maybe I'll stick with my Xbox.
I'm not going to call you wrong because usually that goes badly for me. But But I will say, in the moment, it is a huge get for Sony that they're jumping ahead, man. It's like we've talked for years, literally years, about having an over-the-top service that brings the cable-like experience to everybody without bothering to have cable. And this is, I mean, would it be fair to say this is the closest to this that we've seen yet?
Yeah. This is the first one announced anyway. I mean, we still got to find out how much it's going to be. And I think that's probably in flux because they're still doing negotiations. My guess is Sony's hoping very hard to do a deal with ABC Disney, at least if not before they launch this invite-only beta, soon thereafter, and hopefully before they launch commercially, because that's a big one not to have. They may never get HBO. That's a whole different situation there. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Andy, if you were to price this, what do you think is a reasonable rate that's going to give them enough of a return and still get people through the door?
Well, I think you have to think of probably 2 tiers, although they really need to keep it simple. But I would think what most people would expect is to see something pretty cool with maybe not all the content, but something for 35, 40, 45, somewhere under $50. And then maybe another tier that's $70 or $80. But I have no idea. I think it's going to be really hard for anybody to do anything meaningful under $50, which is why I said earlier, I don't think price is going to be the differentiator. They might come out and say, the early years of this are relatively expensive, but then appeal to people with the way the service feels. I mean, think about some of the changes they could do that would be phenomenally different than anything in the cable or satellite industry, and in fact put a lot of pressure on the whole industry to change. And they've claimed some of them in the scan information we've seen so far, where it's going to be just one, a very simple offering. The whole idea of all these special deals they offer, and that we all have to go through some charade of every 6 or 10 months calling up and threatening to cancel. I mean, I have friends that you guys maybe you've done this.
We have.
I'm too lazy to do it, but they do that to great reward, right? They pay far less for cable than I do. And just to have a company that you can trust and suddenly not feel like you have to go through any of those charades or feel silly that you're not, that alone is a huge change, where suddenly I could see people leaning in saying, I don't mind if they don't have Turner's networks. I'm going to wait. HBO is talking about going a la carte anyway. I want to support these guys and support the way they're making me feel as a customer, because it's almost like the patronage model. I think there's some mileage they could make there because there's so much distaste for the feel of cable and satellite and how they do business.
Man, it's really wild that you would mention the patronage model, because I just feel like that's so directly related to, wow. Hey, Tom, did you know that we have a patronage model here on Cordkillers?
I mean, a patronage model would never be able to support a show.
Hold
on. Less a network.
It's the 21st century. People can pay a few nickels and support the shows they love. For example, if you go to patreon.com/Cordkillers, you'll see that we have 2,018 patrons who are keeping us afloat. This is the rise of the middle-aged patron, man. How great is this?
The rise of the Middle Ages of patronage. Wait, no, this is fantastic. Thanks to every single person who sees the value in Cordkillers and says, you know what, I'll kick a little back. We don't even ask for much. Like you say, just a few cents, maybe $1 an episode at the most. And enough of you are doing it that it's keeping us going. So we really appreciate it.
Yes. And if you'd like to join the club, of course, we'll send out secret insider information to you. Head on over to patreon.com/Cordkillers. Thank you to the patrons who make us an independent podcast. We're like NPR, basically.
Well, and eventually we'll hit the level where I can pronounce things.
Take 2. NPR. There we go.
Let's move on to Signals Intelligence.
You got it.
The pronunciation level is 3,000. Signals Intelligence is our segment where we talk about stuff that helps you watch the things. Usually it's streaming services, but actually today it's something from the MPAA, which you torrent and pirate party members may be very suspicious of. But MPAA has launched where2watch.com. It's a service that helps you find where streaming or downloadable for purchase movies and TV shows are available online. They also include DVD and Blu-ray in a nicely separated area if that's what you want. They give you trailers and behind-the-scenes footage for the things you're searching for, and it's pretty comprehensive. They search across Amazon, iTunes, Netflix, Hulu, Crackle, Flickster, Paramount Movies. I mean, and the list goes on. They even have ABC Family, ABC, Sci-Fi Now, and it's all laid out very nicely. I have to say, Brian, this, there's the Can I Stream ITs and the videos and stuff out there, but this ended up looking really good.
I mean, I hate, actually, what's funny is I was
I don't
about to
even
say,
hate to say
I hate to say it, but it's like, I guess I'm glad to say it. It's like, we want the man, and let's face it, there's nothing more the man than the MPAA, right? They're about as the man as you get. But it's like, if the man joins the party and wants to actually get you a chance to see what you want, when you want, on whatever device you want, I've got to be nothing but 100% behind that, right? I got to give it a high five.
MPAA, we've been saying really what they should be doing is helping their members to compete with piracy, right? Not try to squash piracy necessarily, but make the legal alternatives better because they are intrinsically better. And that's exactly what this does. It says, don't go out there in a search engine and get some torrent that might infect you. Just go here. And the only problem is when something isn't going to be available, and that's going to happen. But this is a really cool tool.
Well, and we've talked about this show on the show several times. We've said that convenience trumps fidelity, right? And while we don't support piracy of any kind, the fact is a lot of people are able to download higher quality resolutions of X, Y, or Z and watch it themselves. We are not fans of that solution, but the tighter that you can make that gap between the desire to watch a movie and the convenience of being able to type it in and then see it, the better off content creators are. So in that regard, like this is huge. We've talked about canistream.it several times, but the fact that we have kind of a legitimate, parental figure playing that game is nothing but good news as far as I'm concerned.
Andy, I guess my question for you is going to be, why don't we see things like this more often, right? Because this is sort of the best of all worlds happening.
Yeah, I think, well, look, the problem we're attacking is a good one in that there's so much great content. It happens to be in a million different places. But, it actually takes a lot of work to make a service like that. And I like this one. There were others before it that have sort of come and gone, but I like the look of this. So I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, they obviously hired somebody who knew user interfaces and did some testing to find out how people use this stuff. I've got a couple things that I'd prefer work slightly different, but overall, it's the best one of these that I've used.
Absolutely.
Maybe Fan TV is right in there with it, but and this is what an industry association, this is what I think of an industry association do, saying, hey, we're out of it. We're not trying to pick winners in the industry. We're just telling you, here's where you can find the stuff.
Yeah,
it's kind of surprising.
Exactly. Absolutely, right? Well, here's what I like about it. I was able to, I'm typing in Guardians of the Galaxy right now. What I like about this is that it's so approachable. We talk about the babysitter test, the father-in-law test, the grandparent test, or whatever. But it's like right now, I typed in Guardians of the Galaxy, and I was not led immediately to a torrent site or whatever, and instead I was led to a place to pre-order it for it, to legally come out. I think this is great news.
Yeah, digital streaming where it's in theaters, which is perfect. A little bit of extra content. It's not covered in advertisements because that doesn't need to be. The association is funding it. I mean, the downsides, I guess, would be mostly conspiratorial that, they'll be tracking you somehow.
Oh, but, whatever. Dude, everybody's tracking you for everything you ever do. Whatever.
So if you're worried about that stuff, you might be suspicious, but it's a nice, clean tool.
Can't wait for the Gawker article about my porn searching habits. Thank you.
About yours in particular?
No, my personally. Like, I'll tell you what I like.
I'll talk to my friends over there.
All right,
see if we
thanks.
can get something going. All right, let's gear up, shall we?
Shall we? I mean, that means we have to put on gear.
It doesn't mean putting it on.
Well, I mean, we have to gear up. We have to go
does
upwards.
mean the gear you use to watch the stuff you want, when you want, where you want. These are the devices that you are pleased to watch upon. Now,
Can we pause on everything? Can we have like a freaking Star Trek style intro? Like, these are the devices that you want to use. In
our
order to
5-year mission.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, real quickly before we get into the main topic here, I want to give a little shout, because some people will listen to this after we know. Nokia put a picture of what really looks like a set-top box up and said, we've got some surprises for you, and they're going to announce it tomorrow. So we may have a Nokia set-top box coming. I didn't really want to talk about it much because we don't really know. It could be like, and this is a really big phone with no screen.
Okay, so by the definition of surprise, shouldn't they post that picture and then say like psych like the next day?
Yeah, it's
like,
just a box and you open it up.
Yes,
and there's a watch
exactly.
inside.
It's got a waffle inside. You're like, eat
but let's
this
talk
waffle.
about Screens TV. Now, this is being funded on Indiegogo. It's flexible funding, so they don't have to get their goal, but their goal is $200,000 by December 13th. They're selling the Screens TV set-top box for $399. And before you yawn and say, oh, great, another set-top box, here's what it does. It takes 5 separate HDMI signals, up to 5, puts them on your screen, laid out in one image. It also has a browser, which means it can do HTML5 apps as well. And it can take the audio from those 5 inputs, obviously send one to your home theater speakers, but send others to various Bluetooth or Wi-Fi devices. So conceivably, 5 people could be watching 5 different shows and all getting the audio for the thing they're watching, and all 5 things be up on the screen.
Okay, so I have very specific thoughts about this, but first I want to hear from Andy on this. Like, what does your gut tell you about this device?
Well, my first thought was, I'm not sure as a consumer I need it, but secondly, as I sort of brainstormed about what would be interesting uses, it may be that the really interesting uses are not the obvious ones. Like, one thing that I think has been that is an interesting option, and there hasn't been a good technological solution to make it easy, is think about sports calls. If you're watching football, I mean, the major networks do a pretty good job of sports calls on football, some better than others. But think about the idea where, you could have a couple folks, heck, it could be you guys, say you love football or basketball, and you just start doing an alternate call on the game. And people pass that around. I think there's some experiences like that where suddenly you want to see a couple screens because people are doing really interesting things that pair well, but you need to see both things at once. So I think we may not be able to know until people start to experiment and you suddenly see uses where you say, wow, this is something that just couldn't happen before, and it's really cool.
I mean, I'd hate to say it, but it's like watching the ad for it. Number one, 2 things occur to me. First of all, this is the absolute realization of what they predicted TV viewing would be like in 2015, according to Back to the Future 2, right? I mean, this is, someone sitting down saying, give me these 5 channels and throw them on the screen. Like, that's actually happening now, which is wonderful in its own right. But it seems to me like the only value to this is if I want to keep tabs on what my children are watching. Because like if you take the children out of it and I'm just a single guy watching this stuff by myself, why would I want to watch what my wife is watching? Or why would I want to watch what, any of these?
Let me throw something in real quick. What if it's, I want to play Forza Motorsport and Eileen wants to watch The Voice? We can both do it on the same screen.
I mean, I guess.
With discrete audio.
But isn't that one of the things that Xbox One was sold on? Was that they promised that ability?
Okay, I've got a PS4 then.
Well, okay.
I mean, I'm just saying. And
I mean,
yeah.
that's shrinking the appeal of this device, right?
I don't know. I mean, I think Andy's got a really good point, is we really don't know what uses people might put it to. Multiple player video games was one thing that was thrown out in the Next Web article, like a LAN party kind of situation. Another thing would be the sports, as we mentioned. Other things would be people who want to watch 2 different things but be in the same room. You could do that. I think you're asking the right question, though, Brian, is are there enough people who really want this kind of thing? And Schnago in the chat room pointed out another snag, which is I don't see any mention of HDCP on this Indiegogo page, which means things like HBO aren't going to work. because there's copyright protection on them.
Well, and plus also the other thing I didn't see anywhere in here was talking about like getting audio for different programs. Like, is it something where you can have 4 different programs and each individual person has their own, earbuds in their own
That it sounds
mobile
like
device?
through Bluetooth. Yeah, that you would be able to do that.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, that's slightly better, but again, I don't know that it seems to me like it's forcing an issue. Like we all have this visual shared memory of everybody gathering in the family room watching television, and it seems like this is a way to wedge that into happening, but I don't know that that's what any of us want, I guess is what I'm saying.
And there's a couple things. One is I know that I would like the ability to watch something while Eileen is watching something else, probably watch as much as play, but I do that. I just watch it on my laptop. And the idea is like, oh, but you could watch it on the big screen, except I can't. I can watch it on half
a corner of the big
16:9
screen. I guess that's my whole thing is like, is that a superior experience? Is sitting there watching your stuff in a corner? I don't know.
It's a weird balance. I don't want to poo-poo it. I don't even want to say that word. But no,
let me ask Andy. Andy, are you somebody who would like to see your programming in the corner while your significant other watches on the big screen?
No, I think Tom said it. We all have so many screens now. You have plenty of options to do that in other ways that also feel a little more personal rather than something that's distracting. I mean, humans are not good multitaskers.
Yes.
So that's why I say I think there might be some really cool applications of this, but it's probably not going to be the traditional things that we might think about from Back to the Future. It's probably going to be something where new content arises where, yeah, it could be gaming, could be the sports stuff, could be other things we can't think of now that you've got to, somebody's got to see this before they create it.
Yeah, and that's tends to be how it is, isn't it? It's like we need to see the application in order to appreciate the development.
All right, so those of you out there yelling right now that you have the one true use of this, go back them on Indiegogo, Screens TV. You got till December 13th.
That's
you can get
SKREENS TV.
Yeah,
so
you can
there's
search
a K,
for it. It's all
not a-
one word.
yeah.
$399 if you back them. It'll be $499 when it goes to retail, and they say they will go to retail winter 2015.
Hey, man,
Sounds
real quick, Tom, last week a guy came up to me on the street. He was like, hey, man, I really like Cordkillers. I was like, well, that's a weird thing for a random person to say. And he's like, yeah, specifically, I want to know how I could support you guys. So I was like, well, you can go to Patreon. And he's like, shut up about Patreon. And then he punched me. I was like, well, that was uncalled for.
Yeah. That's
and then he said, I want to know how to give money to you directly. And I was like, I hope this isn't weird. But I was like, well, you can support Tom Merritt directly by
Well, I
buying
would have said, I'm
his
right
books.
here. Give me money.
Well, okay, but that's what you would have said, but that's not
Right.
what I said. I said support Tom Merritt by going to TomMerrittBooks.com, and you can pay for his books, including The Year in Tech History.
Yeah, actually brand new, just out, illustrated by Scott Johnson. It's the entire year from January to December. 3 or 4, sometimes more things that happened that were significant in tech history on every day of the year. We pack it all in there. So get the illustrations. You can get a printed version or you can get an ebook version in multiple formats. We've got Kindle out right now. It's submitted to the Nook store and the iBook store, and we'll add those links as it comes, or just search those stores and check it out. TomMerrittBooks.com if you're into tech history, and it's updated. If you got the old chronology of tech history, this will have things that weren't in there.
Yeah, dude, forget that old busted crap. Get with the new hotness, man.
And now we get with the front lines.
Yeah.
Front lines.
Andy, are you familiar with how we do the front lines here?
I am not.
Okay.
Well, what we do is we give each story here, and I think we've got 4 stories today. We give them don't start the clock.
Restart that clock. What are you doing? For crying out loud.
Each story is 60 seconds. And if one of us is interested enough, and we run to the end of 60 seconds, we can each give 1 extension to the story.
Okay.
All right. Now we can start the clock.
Finally.
More apps added to Chromecast for support. Showtime Anytime added Chromecast support. Stars Play which actually isn't available on most of the set-top boxes like Roku or Apple TV, now has Chromecast support. Also a bunch of game titles, some casual game stuff like Wheel of Fortune and Just Dance Now.
Yeah, man, this was fascinating to me because I would normally think of, as you and I have discussed before, like my only problem with all of these set-top boxes is that they tend to be underpowered. But the fact that they're going for sort of casual games, stuff that most underpowered units would be able to do, I think is good news. But I don't know how to feel about the fact that, you know, licensed properties and so on, it's... I don't know that anybody is going to buy the Chromecast just for the games. And
No.
I think it's great that they're offering it, but I don't think anyone's going to buy it for that. I'll take an extension to offer it to Andy. Andy, what's your gut say about gaming on a Chromecast?
Yeah, I think you're right. I just think of Chromecast and AirPlay more as, in terms of general entertainment, is it an alternative so that lots of companies don't have to develop for all the platforms and all the set-top boxes? Is it an end around there? And I think that's really interesting. How many people are actually doing it, I don't know. But I agree on the gaming point. I don't think that's something that's going to drive adoption.
Well, in that regard, I think they're actually doing a good job from the picks that they've made, at least publicly. And again, I don't know how much of this is verifiable, but like they have a Monopoly and, you know, essentially board games. And a board game, I think, is the right kind of thing to engage people on an underpowered device. But I don't know, like, Tom, are you ever going to play Monopoly on this thing?
No, I mean, I don't think it hurts anything, but I think you're right. The reason you get a Chromecast is for showtime anytime, because you really want to watch, you know, Weeds or The Dick.
Yeah. Well, your time is up. Hey, man, 17 companies have been joining together to form the Streaming Video Alliance in order to work on an open architecture defining specifications for network and cloud-based streaming and caching infrastructure, quality of experience, and interoperability. Take two.
Interoperate.
They can interoperate. The group intends to propose specs and standards bodies not act as standards body itself. I don't know what that means. That's okay.
The group intends to propose specs to the standard bodies.
There you go.
They aren't going
Thank
to
you.
act as a standards body.
Thank you. Among the members are Charter, Comcast, Epix, Fox, MLB, and Yahoo, but not Netflix and YouTube. And I'll take an extension because I muddled that entire thing. How important are Netflix and YouTube in this game? Like, is it, how significant is it that they don't want to play ball on this?
Well, my guess on this is, because this isn't a standards body, this is a group that's pulling together to say, let's create some proposals for tech that we think is going to work to help us make our video. And there's two reasons why a Netflix and a YouTube might not join. One is they don't feel they need that help, that they're working at such scale that it might even get in the way because they have different problems. And the other thing is they don't want to reveal how they do things to their competitors. So for them, it's like they just don't see any advantage in it. Andy, do you think I'm close to the mark?
I think you are. I think those two are dead on. And I think I'd add a third one that was always a factor for us at Hulu, in that you just don't know if you're going to get any return on all the time you spend being involved in something like that. I mean, you can spend a lot of time and make have a really hard time getting to recommendations, and then not even be sure that they're going to be acted on. So that's a risk.
Fair enough. All right, Tom.
YouTube is launching a subscription music service called Music Key in beta this week. Service offers access to Google Play's music library, as well as ad-free music videos, background playback capability, and offline caching on YouTube for $8 a month, or $7.99. At least that's the trial offer. Then it goes up to $9.99 after a while. To sign up for an invite, you go to youtube.com/musickey. YouTube has already added music videos in a new section that features personalized playlists and full albums. You get those for free, except you have to watch the ads. So this is the MTV of the modern generation, right?
I mean, yes, but also like did you notice anything as far as like rebroadcast licenses? For example, one of the things that the video itself shows is, of course, all the famous videos that made YouTube famous, but many of those were remixes or retransmissions or repurposing of that content, and yet there was nothing said explicitly about that. Did you happen to notice anything on the licensing agreement that would make it more appealing to somebody who wanted to make a, cartoon based around a certain video or whatever?
I didn't read the licensing agreement, not being a party to it.
Okay,
I'm not sure what you're asking.
I guess
what I do know is that anybody who makes a creation at the YouTube space where my wife works has to put it through legal and show that they have received the proper permissions to use it, or that it qualifies as a parody, or they've paid the mechanical royalty on a cover, etc. So I assume all of this stuff has.
I mean, I guess I don't know. It just seems like for what they're pitching, like I don't know that anybody under 25 would pay $8 a month for consumption of music, but especially on YouTube, something that they are accustomed to experiencing for free. I'll take an extension on this. Yeah, get rid of that music. And then, but I do know a number of people under 25 that would pay for the ability to retransmit or to transform into a different whatever. I don't know. I mean,
this isn't for that though. This is for people to this is a Spotify for YouTube.
I mean, that's terrible if that's the case. Like, I don't.
Why is
understand.
that terrible?
I mean, I don't understand the appeal to it because, again, it's like Spotify is something that was whatever, and then it became a few dollars a month, and it was easy for me to say yes, I'll do it. But YouTube built its brand on being free. It's very difficult for me to accept paying for that after being accustomed to it being
You're
free.
basically just paying to get rid of commercials. That's all.
I mean, I guess I don't know. Andy, am I reading this wrong?
Yeah, I don't have the concerns that you have, Brian. I think you think about this as an alternative to Spotify, as well as an ad-free alternative to Vivo or to all the video on YouTube. But also, if they've done it right, and you alluded to this, my hope is they've done it right. They have access to all the covers and a lot of material that nobody else but YouTube has. I think in both audio and video, that could be pretty cool. So if the product design is good and the price is right, I'm interested in it.
Right on. All right, well, we're halfway into the next segment. Wait, what just happened? That's all right. Google will test and approve each Android TV app before it goes live in the Play Store. Walk me through exactly what this means, Tom Merritt.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be controversial for some people because they're like, I want an open store. I don't want them to have to sign off. They're going to restrict things. But this is the way Apple does everything in the App Store on iOS. It's just not the way Google has normally done Google Play's App Store for Android phones, although they've gotten stricter and they have the right to kick stuff out. So this is just meaning that they're going to monitor what goes into the Android TV store. So if you buy one of these Android TV devices, like the Nexus Player, it's not going to be filled with a bunch of malware. That's what we hope.
I mean, it makes sense, but on the other hand, like how many shows show up on the for submission that are so bad that they need to have a veto power over them?
Well, it's not shows, it's apps, right? They're worried about malware or things that break, and that was one of the problems with Google TV was the performance. They said, these apps aren't very good. So this is a way for them to control that quality.
So I guess you know what? That makes a lot of sense because that's something that I was complaining about before, which is, the speed of apps. So forget everything that I said. I have nothing to do with anything.
It keeps the malware away from it.
Yeah, shut my mouth. I'm done.
Too. All right. Hey, Andy, you got any ideas on Android TV?
No, because I just don't use it enough. I mean, I think you're onto it. It sounds like they're going to try and avoid some of the issues. I just don't have a sense of how big those issues have been. Yeah,
I don't either. I think they're just being extra careful. Let's see what's under surveillance.
Wait, that means stuff that we watch, right? That's exactly under surveillance. That's what I said.
Vimeo's first original programming series launched a new season of the previously self-funded show High Maintenance, released 3 episodes at $1.99. 3 more will come in 2015, and you can prepay for the whole season right now for $7.99. The show is about a pot dealer in Brooklyn and the lives of his customers. Each episode revolves around a different customer.
Dude, I'm not going to lie. We are totally going to talk about this in spoiler in time. But man, oh man, this was my favorite thing that I watched all week. I only watched the first episode of the series, and hopefully you watched it as well. We'll talk about it in spoiler in time. But better than anything else, like as good as Transparent on Amazon Prime, I absolutely loved what I saw of this.
You know, with Transparent now on Amazon, with High Maintenance, which I agree is really good, and it's Vimeo getting into originals. Hulu's been doing originals. Netflix has been doing originals. Crackle has been doing originals. It feels like we are entering, you know, the upslope of originals from internet properties. Andy, you've got some perspective on this. I would assume you would agree with that.
Yeah, I think there's a ton of really interesting stuff getting made. I'm glad to hear Brian's enthusiasm for High Maintenance. I haven't looked at it, but I'll definitely check it out. But I think that the hard thing is, especially in Vimeo's model, can you get 100, 200, 300,000 people to go make the decision to give it a shot? I hope they can, because I want to see great content get made. But we talked about it a little earlier. It's such a busy marketplace, and there's so many people making content. It starts to get more expensive and harder to get, you know, to find the right audience.
Yeah.
So I think it's an amazing time in terms of things getting made, but I think we are going to see people struggle to find audience.
Well, especially with this I don't know. With this title, it's difficult because it's like you know that not only is the audience smaller compared to Hulu, compared to YouTube, compared to, you know, Netflix, you know, the biggest players in the market, but also the fact that the subject matter is sort of, you know, a bit perilous in that it divides the audience. But on top of that, like, I mean, Vimeo is a small player, and these episodes are less than 20 minutes long. They don't even pretend to be hour-long content. You know, they are exactly what they want to be, and they say, give us $2 or don't. I mean, I would like to think everybody will spend money on this, but to be honest, like, the businessman in me says that it's not very likely.
Yeah, no, the pricing could be the downfall of this, if there is a downfall. But talking about the content, I agree. It's pretty quality, and we'll talk about it on spoiler time. Amazon announced 7 pilots for 2015, and here's what's coming. Cocked, with Sam Trammell, who was in True Blood, as a guy who returns to rural Virginia. Mad Dogs, a U.S. version of a UK series about people in their 40s reuniting. The Man in the High Castle, based on a book by Philip K. Dick about San Francisco if Germany won World War II. Point of Honor, a Civil War drama produced by Carlton Cuse of Lost fame. Half-hour shows, Down Dog, about a yoga studio owner who breaks up with his girlfriend/co-owner. And Salem Rogers, a supermodel who comes out of rehab after 10 years. And then there's also a docuseries, a documentary series of half-hour documentaries called The New Yorker Presents.
Dude, would you say this is the best batch of stuff that Amazon has announced to date? Or is that just me making up, like, projecting?
It's hard to tell, right? Like, these are very short descriptions. There's bigger descriptions on the Entertainment Weekly write-up, but I think it does have the higher level of names and quality producers and writers behind it. Man in the High Castle is my favorite science fiction book of all time, so I'm very nervous and excited about that. Andy, what do you think of this lineup?
I think they're making really interesting choices. I mean, as you said, you don't know until you see it, but I think they're experimenting, you know, sort of across the content spectrum, and that's good. I mean, it seems like they're making good choices, but we've ultimately got to watch these series and see if we get hooked.
Yeah.
So
well,
only
thing,
now,
right,
after we've talked about it, do I feel the need to point out that this is like a reversal of the normal disclaimer that we do. We should point out that Mad Dogs stars, among others, Ramani Malco, friend of the show. So I feel like the need to to just throw that out there.
So obviously that show will be amazing.
Yes, exactly.
Netflix's first UK original is about the Queen of England. Makes sense. It's in the UK. It's called The Crown. Makes sense because queens wear crowns. It'll be based on a West End play called The Audience, which I assume would be an audience with the Queen wearing her crown. It's a 10-episode miniseason coming in 2016. Brian, you marked this as being interesting to you.
Dude,
Are you an
well,
Anglophile?
I'll tell you what, any kind of Netflix original I'm totally into, man.
All
I
right,
don't
I
know
get
what
that.
it is. Like, they've done an amazing job of crafting a brand that means if we're going to slap our logo on it, you're going to be glad that you wasted your time watching it. And that goes retroactively. You know, like Netflix originals only did the last season of Arrested Development. They only did the last season of Trailer Park Boys. But all of those, you know, by slapping their logo on it, I go back to the beginning, I watch all of those, and I'm super, super thrilled.
Yeah, I have a feeling we'll get this. It seems like anything that Netflix has made original in the U.S. goes to all the other Netflixes overseas. So I'm hoping we get a chance to see this as well. But it is targeted towards the UK audience. Andy, any Anglophile strains in you?
No, none whatsoever. But I think Brian's right. Like Netflix has sort of earned they've earned their way to the point where we'll give it a shot, and that's a great thing.
Yeah.
And then finally, J.J. Abrams and Jonathan Nolan's Westworld pilot.
I'm sorry, say that again. I wasn't able to hear you correctly.
J.J. Abrams and Jonathan Nolan's Westworld pilot.
Just so we're clear about this is Jonathan Nolan, the writer of half the crap that we love from Christopher Nolan, right?
Yes, that's the guy. And then J.J. Abrams, Bad Robot, maker of Felicity.
Okay, and also you mentioned Westworld, which might be one of my favorite bizarro fantasies that Michael Crichton wrote back in the 1970s and directed, by the way.
I'm getting the feeling you might be excited that they've picked it up for an entire run of episodes.
I'm a little bit really excited about Westworld, dude.
All right,
Westworld
so let
is
me lay
incredible.
this on top. Anthony Hopkins as the inventor, James Marsden, Evan Rachel Woods, and Thandie Newton as the androids. And the cast also includes Ed Harris, Miranda Otto, and Jeffrey Wright.
James Marsden. That's Spike from Buffy the Vampire.
He was also Brainiac in Smallville.
Dude, this looks so good. I saw I clicked on a link and I saw a Vine, a 6-second Vine that just basically all it said was Westworld, HBO. Are you in yet? And the answer was yes. Yes, I am.
I mean, it's got all the names. I mean, it really is interesting to see the number of film stars willing to do television in this HBO arena particularly, but also in like FX with Fargo. I don't know, Andy, are you excited for this? I know you've gone from it being your job to watch a lot of television recently to being able to watch something. Would this make it into your queue?
Oh, absolutely. I'm really excited for that one. And I think it is interesting. I think there are plenty of people in film where they recognize that a lot of the really exciting creativity now is in episodic TV. It's hard to make. One thing I got to learn at Hulu, it's hard to make a great movie. It's really hard to make 40 episodes of TV that hang together and keep people, riveted to their screens and have them, committed to devoting that much time. It's tough, but when it's done right, HBO's shown it. It's fantastic. And
I'm excited.
We've mentioned this before, but I cannot encourage enough people to go and listen to on audible.com Difficult Men talking about the creation of The Wire, of Breaking Bad, of The Sopranos. It talks about the fundamental differences and The Shield as well, specifically from different creators trying to figure out what is it that will hook everyone in and whether or not you're cool with the traditional 3-act structure for different shows and so on. For example, the creator of The Shield talks specifically I kind of love writing things leading to a big cliffhanger that goes into a commercial break, and whereas meanwhile that's the entire thing that the Sopranos was a rejection against, and certainly The Wire as well. Anyway, Difficult Men is a fantastic book on that stuff.
All right, let's talk about what we're watching before we finish up on Under Surveillance. I know that you are finally in the Game of Thrones universe. Andy, how are you enjoying it?
I'm in season 2. Season 1, actually, I was scratching my head a little, saying, it doesn't seem as good as all the hubbub would indicate. But I felt like it turned around in season 2. I'm totally sucked in now. So yeah, I'm playing a little catch up. Hulu, I had to sample a lot, but it was hard to really commit to things and watch in volume. So
all right, so if I want to play coy here, I would say, was it like the last 1 or 2 episodes that there was some event that suddenly made it clear to you that this was a show worth watching? Question mark.
What, the last 1 or 2 of season 1?
Yes.
No, actually, I know what you're referring to. No, my concern with season 1 is they made it hard for me to root for anyone, including the people that saw their demise in those episodes. Like whereas in season 2, I'm finding it a lot easier to find characters that I want to root for. So,
right on.
Yeah. I'm a critic though, but I'm really liking what they're doing in season 2, and so I'm into it now.
The good news, bad news, you'll never have anyone you entirely like the entire series long, but it'll be delightful the entire way.
There's a couple of people I like, but they're usually minor characters. you never get to know them well enough.
Who die instantly.
Yeah. Actually, I like Tyrion, I have to say. But that may be more on the books than the TV show, which is a whole different experience there. You mentioned High Maintenance, Brian, and you're obviously watching Twin Peaks for its spoiler in time.
Yep.
Anything else to throw in there?
I'm looking at what I wrote down. I watched a little show you might have heard of called The Walking Dead.
Oh, finally.
Everybody's on my junk telling me to watch The Walking Dead. Guess what? I watched 2 episodes today, and I can't wait to talk about them in spoiler in time.
That you watched 2 episodes.
Yeah. Nope. Yeah. Spoiler alert. It was rad and really good, and I'm glad that there was a gap. Like, weirdly, it was more awesome for not knowing what happened in the interim.
Yeah. I've been watching The Shield. We'll talk about episode 12 of season 3 on Spoiler in Time. I'm watching all the shows that I've been watching, including Walking Dead, Haven, etc. I got to say, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is really the one that's impressing me that I didn't expect to continue to impress me. I thought they might have hit a high with the Captain America tie-in and then come back down to earth, but I feel like they're really keeping it alive. Also, really enjoying Walking Dead, as you said. And then I watched... just on a whim, because I rarely ever have this happen, but I had time where I was just like, I just want to watch something random, and turned on Seeking a Friend for the End of the World with Steve Carell and Keira Knightley, and a fabulous movie. Very, I love a post-apocalyptic movie, and that's kind of the premise, is an asteroid's going to hit the Earth, but it's also kind of a romantic comedy at the end of the world. So,
this was something that was in theaters in mass distribution, and now is on. Okay, for some reason I missed the in mass distribution.
Yeah. All right, let's check in on the winter movie draft.
Yeah.
Well, John's disappointed that Foxcatcher didn't do better for him, I'm sure. Dumb and Dumber 2 was the big one this past week. Brian, you got $36 million out of it. Is that pleasing to you?
I honestly don't know. Actually, I'm tempted to say yes, because that means I did almost 2 to 1 what I hoped. It's tough. The winter movie draft is fundamentally different from the summer movie draft. I'm gonna say that for $20, the fact that it got almost $40 million on opening weekend, I'm happy with.
Scott Johnson leading the way on the strength of Big Hero 6 and Interstellar, which both had decent second weeks. Big Hero 6 still outgrossing Interstellar a little bit. And then I'm putting it all on the line this weekend against Justin Robert Young's The Imitation Game with The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1.
$82 you spent on this. I would like to reiterate, $82, which according to my estimates is about 82% of your budget you blew on Mockingjay. This thing better perform or you're screwed.
Yeah, no, this is it. It's all or nothing.
What do you want this thing to do, man?
I would like it to do $600 million. I think that's what's going to happen. Yeah, it kind of has to do all the money.
Okay. Yeah. We'll see. I mean, I think you'd be happy if it did $300 million, right?
I would be insanely happy if it did that.
I mean,
I don't think it's going to do that.
Ew. All right, we'll see. We'll see. For those of you guys who want to follow along, head on over to draft.diamondclub.tv and take a look at that.
Do you know what we're talking about here, Andy, with our movie draft thing?
Yeah, I mean, I get the idea.
Yeah. It's just it's a little fantasy sports for movies. Let's check out some dispatches from the front. Brian G. posted on Cordkillers.com about the German company we mentioned last week that was offering an app that wrapped Amazon Prime videos in a browser and then made the shell Chromecastable. It's gone. They shut it down.
So what do you think the big problem was with it? It's like, do you think that they're about to do their own offering and they had to shut it down?
I think if Amazon wanted to make videos on Android castable, they would have made it. And so there's probably something in the terms of service that say you can't do that. So they stopped them.
Well, we appreciate your email, sir. Kyle writes us saying, holy cow, Brian. Sometimes you go off arguing the silliest of nitpicky minor points. The most recent one having to go through the one-time setup process for Disney, iTunes, and Google Play. You have to be one of the laziest employees I have. Seriously. It's getting old. Knock it off. And first of all, let me say unequivocally, I don't blame you if that's how you feel about me as your employee. However, and this is what I wrote in response to him, I said, in my defense, I don't think I was saying anything controversial, and I was a bit surprised that Tom took me to task on it. If I had it to phrase all over again, I would have said, quote, signing up for 2 ecosystems I don't currently use, and then signing up to a third to tie them together. Also, I could begin to purchase content that doesn't strike me as something. Whatever. I was saying that something that I personally am not going to do. That's all I was saying.
Well, yeah, and I made a bigger deal out of it than I should have. All I was trying to say is I think you're already members of the first 2. Like, I think you have an iTunes account, and I think you have a Google Play account. And I think a lot of people will. So for most people, this will just be like, oh, sign it into Disney Movies, create an account there, done.
Yeah.
But you're right. If you had to sign up for 3 different accounts to stitch it together, that's
I mean, and again, to me, what I was trying to express is that I would do all of that just for the privilege of beginning to purchase content is what I don't think would happen.
Right. And I do think enough people already have one or both of these accounts for whatever reason, but this ends up not being as big of a barrier for those people.
Yeah, and people correctly point out the fact that I have an iPhone and I have a Gmail account, therefore I already have 2 of the 3. But again, it's like the fact that it didn't occur to me that I had those.
Well, and so those psychological barriers could be enough to keep people out if they don't.
That's what I'm saying.
If they think about it the same way. Totally.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm curious, Andy, what you think of the Disney Movie Anywhere thing versus the ultraviolet system and that divide.
Well, I think the ultraviolet was good in concept, but it's been implemented in somewhat of a clunky way. People, you just want to buy media and play wherever you can play it. I'll be interested to see how smoothly this works to bridge those ecosystems. I think the idea is an interesting one. Disney's probably about the only one that could do it, that has enough volume to do it and make it sense. But I'll be interested to see how smoothly it works. Yeah,
and so far the reports have been good, but it's got to be road tested a lot before you can know for sure. David, the Nielsen guy, wrote in and said, hey, guys, you are always talking about how Nielsen is behind the times, but a lot of that is contractual between Nielsen and our clients. Often we're limited by what we can do because of the push and pull between national and local interests. Few local TV stations are interested in internet video measurement, for example, because very little of their content and audience is online. The national networks, however, have their own streaming infrastructure set up. And then he links to an article at mediapost.com about how Nielsen is trying to evolve the way video ratings are done. Hey, I have to give Nielsen credit, and I know David, the Nielsen guy, is going to jump to his company's defense, and I'll give him credit for that. Nielsen has been doing things like the DVR ratings, the DVR plus 3, DVR plus 7, are things that they got on top of and made happen. And some of these efforts to do internet plus television ratings or supplemental ratings for advertisers, I think are very forward-looking. I think the reason we criticize is because the wheels tend to move slowly. And I think what David's pointing out is this is why the wheels move slowly. It's not just Nielsen as a big company, but it's the clients they work with or companies that may be resistant or maybe too big to keep the wheels moving fast themselves.
Absolutely. All right. So, real quick, I'll just read this. Hey guys, I'm a freshman in college and my university does not have a deal with any cable company, so I had to find another way to watch some shows. This won't apply to the vast majority of the audience, but my parents live in Mexico, so I got the Cable Plus internet for around $40 US. The awesome thing is that for an extra $10 a month, I get on-demand online, which basically means I get to stream, because I'm the one that uses it, every channel that they have. For most channels, this is in Spanish, which I do speak, but this also means that live events like the Emmys, the Grammys, the World Series, football on Sundays and Monday night, basketball games, and all live on online. I know I'm cheating on cutting the cord since I'm technically paying for cable service, but I also still get to watch live TV without problems online in HD. I know this seems like something like a Slingbox could do, but there's no way that but this way, no TV is being quote unquote used while I watch some what I want some 2,000 miles away. Love the show, and he says that I do a great job singing along with the theme song. So thank you.
I wonder if he's still in Mexico, because I was thinking
he's in the U.S.
So he goes
as I understand it.
His parents are in Mexico, and then he goes to university in Mexico. And so he uses their login to watch, that's fairly typical. That's a good solution. But then he says 2,000 miles away. I'm like, is he in another country? And then how does that not get IP blocked?
Well, I think he's saying like it might as well be 2,000 miles away. I don't think he's literally claiming to be 2,000 miles away.
Yeah.
Although that would be awesome if he was.
Andy, I don't want to put you in any kind of awkward position, but, how do people feel about things like VPNs or logging in? Like, we've heard a lot of folks in the industry, including Time Warner CEO, saying like, yeah, we know people do it. Is it really bugging people, or they're just gritting their teeth because they know they have to deal with it? Or is it really sort of like, well, waving your hand, what are you going to do?
I think they've gone through waves. I used to get calls from media executives who are on vacation in Greece or wherever it might be saying, my buddy just showed me the stream and I'm watching, The Voice here in Greece. And we try and explain that, it's a pretty good stream, but it's not perfect. And it's a bit of an arms race. You have to chase these IP services. I think there was a paranoid stage when I'd get those calls. I think today people sort of gotten used to it, saying, well, as long as it's, just a few % of viewing, we know we can't make it zero, but it's probably manageable, sort of like piracy. Yeah. And what the reality is, I don't know, but I think they're less concerned about it today, but they keep an eye on it.
All right. Well, that is it for Cordkillers today. Thanks everybody for watching. Andy Forcell, a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time out of is a busy schedule to chat with us and share your perspective. It was invaluable. It's great having you along.
Oh, thanks. You guys, this is great. It was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
If you want to follow Andy, is it Andy Forcell, all one word on Twitter?
It's just A Forcell.
A Forcell.
Forssell.
So check it out.
2 S's, 2 L's.
Yep.
2 S's, 2 L's. Keep an eye out for what he's up to next. Anything else you want to tell people about before we let you go?
Not today. Thanks a lot, guys. This was fun.
Right on. Thank you so much for joining us, Andy.
Cordkillers.com is our website. You can email us, cordkillers@gmail.com. And you can find us live on diamondclub.tv on Mondays at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. We will see you on the internet. And also next week.
That's where we'll see you.
Or outside your window.